one of my favorite, absolute favorite athletes in the world is going to be joining us. Last Saturday night, you saw him make history by becoming the oldest person in boxing history to win a major title. He is someone who I have looked at through the years as the consummate professional, someone who approached the game, the business of boxing, to be the very best, someone who had the discipline, who had the intelligence, the intellect, the instinct, the work ethic to always be at his best. And you know something? When you look at someone who is committed to the kind of excellence that he's been committed to, he is an inspiration and an example. I'm talking about none other than B-Hop, the executioner, Bernard Hopkins. And before I go to Bernard, there is something that I want to read. It is for Bernard, and it is for all of his fans. I got a letter, and it said, "Dear Rock, thanks for the opportunity to be a part of your show today, honoring my great fellow Philadelphia friend, the legendary Bernard Hopkins. Unfortunately, at this time, I am now over the Atlantic Ocean as I fly home to Los Angeles from Zagreb, Croatia. Last Saturday, I woke up in Dusseldorf, Germany, went to the airport, connected through Frankfurt, and arrived in New York City around 3 p.m. Saturday afternoon. It was a grind, but I knew it would be worth the effort, as I had to be there at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn to be a part of history. My airfare would be more than my fee, but this would be worth the travel and the expense. Before the stroke of midnight, with tears in my eyes and trying not to choke on my words, I announced to the crowd that everyone present had just been a part and witnessed history, as Bernard the Executioner Hopkins was once again a world champion, but this time, listen up, folks, at the age of 48 years young, an accomplishment never, ever before achieved in the history of boxing. In my 30-year career as a ring announcer, it was one of the most emotional moments of my life. What Bernard did in the ring that night was a work of art. His conditioning, his ring generalship, his flawless footwork and movement, and his beautiful left shoulder feints, short punches, and cleverness were beyond brilliant. He got the younger, more powerful, undefeated champion, Tavares Cloud, to fight his fight. It was the professor and the student, and the professor was dominating in the classroom. As a ring announcer and as a fan, I want to say thank you, Bernard, for making my life and my job a pleasure and a joy. I love you, my friend. Best, Michael Buffer." Bernard Hopkins, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you, Rock. Thank you. That was one of the greatest introduction that I've received in many years, in about 25 years of boxing. And Michael Buffer, you know, he came over to me and said, "Man, I flew in to see you," and to hear what you just wrote, what he wrote, was a testament to the appreciation of Rock that people have for my hard work.
Bernard, I certainly want to say to you that it is with the deepest sense of sincerity that I said what I said in terms of absolutely admiring who you have been through the years, the professional that you've been through the years. And I really want people in this listening audience on 1480 AM and at www.rocknewmanshow.com are listening and watching around the world to understand that the excellence that I'm talking about that you have been committed to, if they would approach their particular profession or stage and status in life the way you have, then excellence could be theirs. What drives Bernard Hopkins?
What drives me is to push myself and my soul and my spirit and everything that I strive for to the maximum. I set high expectations for myself in my personal life and also in my professional life. As long as I reach close, if not that mark itself, I can't fail. And I realized over the years, before I became Bernard Hopkins, the champion in boxing, my young life prepared me for the good and the bad and everything that comes in between up to now. And that gave me character. They gave me character in the way of never letting anyone dictate to me how I should come up or how I should wind up in life as far as achievements, what I want to be, what I want to accomplish. You know, Rock, you come up in the boxing business as one of the promoters and managers at one time with the heavyweight champion, undisputed of the world, and that's really pro. And you had to endure everything that comes at your goals and your dreams and what you felt strong about, what you had to take a stand for. That stuff is considered risk. If you don't want to rub or go against the grain. And so I've learned over the years that if I have given myself and give myself all of the tools and the condition, if it's boxing, if it's business outside of boxing, if I give myself a winning chance by knowing that I'm going to be prepared mentally, physically, and all the information that I can gather up, I can't and I won't fail. Not only in life, but in my goals. That's that discipline. And that's the word that I'm going to use frequently in this conversation.
Yes.
That discipline is not just for an athlete. That discipline I try to teach the young, I try to teach the people that willing to listen when they ask or when I'm talking to a crowd or one person, is that discipline doesn't have to mean you have to be a superstar in any basketball game, in the ring, on a football field. You can add that to your life, which is important of what you do for your family and yourself and your goals. And so I just use that, Rock, as a foundation for me to stay the course and to live the way I talk and walk that walk. And so it's playing out at 48. Because of the age, it's playing out to let people know I said this when I was 35. When I defeated Felix, the undefeated Trinidad, they was calling me old. They was calling me a good fighter, possibly Hall of Famer.
When you fought Felix Trinidad in Madison Square Garden, all of the experts, certainly most, picked Trinidad to just destroy an old Bernard Hopkins. It reminds me of when the Cincinnati Reds got rid of an old Frank Robinson, and all he did was come into the American League and become the most valuable player. And did he win the triple and win the Triple Crown? That so reminded me of that, Bernard. I remember sitting in the arena that night and just looking at your masterpiece and just admiring not only the work that you did that night, but the commitment that you had made in your career to get to that point. And speaking about your career, there's someone on the line who I think has some words of congratulations. and who also might be able to put in perspective in the world of boxing who Bernard Hopkins is. Tim Smith, New York News Daily writer. I don't know what other people say, but I say you're the best boxing writer in the business right now. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show. You're joining the executioner, B-Hop Bernard Hopkins. Welcome in, Tim.
Well, thanks for having me, Rock, and congratulations, Bernard. You know how I feel about you.
Thank you, Ken. You said you never root against me after the fight with, I believe, Tarver.
No, it was after Trinidad. I haven't gone against you since then.
The Trinidad fight. I know the Pavlik fight. I know that one of those major fights, you was like, yo, I'm not doing it again.
Did you equivocate, Tim? Did you?
You know what? After the Trinidad fight, I told everybody I'm never, ever, ever going to go against Bernard Hopkins in any situation
Tim,
that he can encounter on this planet.
Tim, here's what I'd like for you to do, Tim, for our listening audience. Let's go back to that night. Let's go back to that night at Madison Square Garden. Bernard comes in as a prohibitive underdog, not given a chance by many at all. Tito is at the absolute, top of his game, the really sort of at the golden boy then. Undefeated. And so walk us through what you saw happen in that fight, Tim.
Well, I saw Bernard execute an incredible plan just from the very beginning, taking Trinidad off of his game by going in, having his corner guy go into the dressing room and check the hand wraps, before the fight. I mean, he's always been a master psychologist.
I was getting ready to say, you're not talking about Bernard Hopkins. I mean, Bernard wouldn't play any mind games with the fighters.
Certainly not. but Trinidad, came in and thought he was going to walk through Bernard Hopkins. But Bernard is such a skilled boxer that he timed him perfectly, and Felix Trinidad had a tell. You know how they say in poker, you have a tell. Felix Trinidad, I'll let Bernard Hopkins tell you what the tell was, but Felix Trinidad had something that he did before he would try to land a power shot, and Bernard picked up on it and beat it with a punch.
Bernard, time out, man, because I'm just, being a talk show host here and a former counselor, I hear certain things, you got to ask a question right away. Bernard, tell us about Trinidad's tale.
He had to set and then punch. He had a two-step rock, whether it's the right hand or the left hand. Normally, it was the left hook. And when he shifts his weight to one side to another, the second time he does that, he throws a left hook or a right hand. But mainly, it was the left that was his devastating punch that he been successful with. And we noticed that in many fights. The David Reed fight, we noticed that. We noticed that in the Oscar De La Hoya fight, and Nazim Richardson, and I studied that. And I said, wait a minute. We got to, Nazim, we can offset his setting ways, because he was setting to get the leverage. And every time he rocked to get the leverage, I tested him with a jab. Not a hard jab sometimes. It was just a jab to disrupt, to get him off balance as far as his setting moves. And once I seen that working, mid-rounds or 4 or 5, whatever, I said, he starts back over. Like he will stop and start from the beginning so he can get set. As long as I brought him out to the point where he would never get that second step in, that I said, man, this is going to be not easy, but as long as I stay to course and I keep that jab and touching him once he's set to get ready to throw a punch, I said, man, I can walk him all the way up to at least the 12th round. Then, of course, the knockout came in the 12th, but, I was playing it all out to the bell stopped ringing because I seen that he couldn't punch on the go. He couldn't punch Rock and Tim on the go. He need to stop. He need to set. He need to punch. That's 3 steps. And we picked up on that, and we executed the plan, and we just played it out until I got the knockout in the 12th round.
You know, folks say boxing, folks say fighting. Ring Magazine, a long time ago, there was a brilliant guy who called it le dos science, the sweet science. And what Bernard just described right there is the sweet science. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Bernard, I'm going to ask you to hold on a moment. We're going to go to break and come back and pick this up. You're listening to the Rock Newman Show. Welcome back to the Rock Newman Show. If you want to call in and have a word with Bernard Hopkins, the oldest man ever, he's the oldest man ever to win a major title in boxing, and he broke his own record. Just a phenomenal individual in the ring and outside the ring. Someone who is a living example, truly, of a true inspiration. If this man doesn't motivate you to be your best self, Sylvester said one time when they was talking about a song, if you can't hear that them girls can sing, your ear must be in your foot. So if you don't get motivated after hearing Bernard Hopkins talk, your ear must be underneath your shoe. So Bernard, you were just talking, we were just talking about something, and you just went through the process with Felix Trinidad. You have so very many highlights in your life. We want to talk about them, and we also want to talk about your real sense and your commitment to be an example, to be a motivating force, to be an inspiration to people of all stripes, all colors, all religions, and all races. But you look at the African-American community and you see a very high percentage of obesity. And I know you have a word for the community from which you grew up in. Before we go there, I think I might have another little surprise for you, for somebody that I have often referred to as the greatest referee to ever get in the ring. I remember, and I think this was as early as 1978, the great Matthew Saad Muhammad was fighting Vonzell Johnson in Atlantic City. And Vonzell Johnson was a very game fighter. He had beat Matthew. You know, Matthew Saad Muhammad was a slow starter. And Vonzell Johnson had beaten up on Matthew for maybe, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 rounds or whatever. Matthew Saad Muhammad started to come on. He started to hurt him. And at one point, he hit him with a punch. And truly at that point, you could see the fight was over. Vonzell was out of it. And as is a trained fighter's responsibility and instinct, he had hit him with a left hook, and he was getting ready to drop that right-hand bomb on Vonzell, who had fallen back into the ropes defenseless. I saw Larry Hazard make a beeline, and he caught Matthew Saad Muhammad's right hand before it possibly destroyed Vonzell Johnson. I point that out, and I point out many, many other matches that this man has done, proving, in my estimation, to be one of the greatest referees in the history of the game of boxing. Larry Hazard, welcome to the Rock Newman Show. You're on with B-Hop, Bernard Hopkins.
Hi, Rock. It's good to be on with you. I have to make one correction, though, Rock. That was Jerry the Bull Martin.
Was that Jerry Martin? I thought it was Vonzell. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
No, that was Jerry the Bull Martin.
So you remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely. That was I think that was the fight that made me actually as a referee, in terms of my career, in terms of my trademark, you know. And so it's just great to be on with you and the champ this morning.
Mr. Hazard, and Jerry Bull Martin was even a bigger puncher. So you might have saved fighter's life if that other puncher got in there, because Jerry Bull Martin was a really known puncher.
Well, I know he was never the same fighter again after that fight. Okay, and Leon Tabbs was his trainer, and he protested vehemently, you know. But in later years, you know, Leon Tabbs, you know, who became a very, very good friend of mine, you know, we talked about that frequently, and he attested to the fact that he felt that perhaps I had
saved that fighter's life on that day.
Hey, Larry, it was great chatting with you yesterday, and your reflection of Bernard's start and just the admiration that you've had for him through the years.
Oh, I remember when Bernard first started out his career. I remember when he was with his first some of his first handlers. You know, he was with Butch Lewis. He was with Fareed Ahmed. And I remember he was having some difficulty getting his career started over in Philadelphia there with Russell Peltz, I think it was.
Yes,
and,
yes.
He came in to see me, you know, and he had a couple of situations that they needed straightening out. And I was very, very happy to help them. And I just liked his attitude about the sport of boxing and his attitude about life as a young man who was trying to turn his life around after having had some negative experiences that we certainly all can identify with growing up in the inner cities of America. It was just my pleasure to be able to help him, and I am so proud of what he has done for himself and for his family and for all of us, you know, especially in the sport of boxing, and especially for the over 40 crew. You know, this is fantastic.
That's right. That's right. An absolute true inspiration. Larry, thank you so much for calling in to us, man. I really wanted to let our listening audience hear, you know, your sage and wise observation of someone who has to go down as one of the great, great, great champions, warriors of all time. Larry, thank you so much for joining us.
And before you let Larry go, Larry, I want to tell you, I'll call you so I get off the phone with Rock.
Okay, bro. All right.
Okay,
Rock.
Hey, thank you, Larry. And Bernard, I just said one of the true great warriors in the ring. Part of what I've admired about you, I have been accused of having an independent spirit myself, and certainly the entire time that I was in the boxing industry, I went against the grain. I never wished to become a part of the boxing fraternity. It was a lot that I love the sport. I love
your story.
I love the noble nature of the boxer and the guy that climbs up that ring and makes the fans rise to their feet. That is the best of the boxing game. Some of the things that happen outside of the boxing game with the organizations and the chicanery that goes on between promoters and managers who, you know, sell fighters out like they're pieces of meat. I never, ever wanted to be a part of that fraternity. And, you know, it can be said that I paid a price. We reached a mountaintop at one point, and I'm real happy about that. But part of what I was so very, have so much admiration for you is you always adhered to the Frank Sinatra song, I Did It My Way.
Absolutely, Rock. I noticed and I've witnessed myself, and through others from the past and now, including yourself, that is unfortunately, it's a price you have to pay to be a man in this world. And when you stand up for what you believe in, and you're strongly about what you believe in, there's going to be a resistance. And those resistance are, to me, and I took it this way, as a foundation that I'm going to build off of that, not only character, but my legacy. And it started in the middleweight division, all the way up to 20 defenses, and keeping the title for a decade. Mr. Hazard says something, I'll say Mr. Hazard until I'm 70, because I respect him, and he has the same history that yourself and myself. And I noticed over the years that if you're a fighter, that you cannot say certain things and do certain things, that the industry laid down the rules years and years and years before my time. Mm-hmm. And did I pay a price by not having certain situations, fights, or being promoted, whether it's promoted by the network, which there are the promoters right now, but they're not on paper. Whether it's a consultant, manager, whatever title that they get themselves to work hand in hand together to have control. I chose to go against the grain, and I knew in my heart that if I don't be a man in, I can't be a man out. And I said to myself that where I've come from as far as my personal business, which is well documented, not proud of it, but it did, up to now, build character, wherever the situation was. And mine was the penitentiary. And from there, I realized that this ain't a place to be thinking you're somebody special. You have to be somebody special after you're out of here.
Yeah, somebody special on the outside.
But I knew, Rock, I knew that I had to go and endure things that I know that eventually they won't stop me, and they didn't stop me. And it made my legacy even more now, because it's not only a story behind my legacy, it's a history. And boxing is what I do, but it's not who I am. And Rock, I just wanted to get that off. You know, that boxing is what I've done well, obviously, but it's not who I am.
Bernard,
I have to defend that.
I have tried to say that to athletes. You know, you play the game of basketball, you make millions of dollars. You box in the ring, that's what you do, but it's not who you are. It is so ultimately refreshing to hear you, someone who, you know, just broke history once, made history once again by becoming the oldest person to ever win a championship in boxing. Is so very refreshing to hear you say that. And I have a refreshing gentleman on the line that wants to join us here, Bernard. I'll tell you, man, there's such mad appreciation and respect for you. You know, people normally wait till they get to the end of a show to say, "Hey, you got to come back on." Not only am I going to say you got to come back on, one of these days,
and I'm there.
One of these days, you got to come to
in the studio.
I was going to say,
in the studio,
my man, and I'll tell you, because part of the mission of the Rock Newman Show is to inspire people, and to especially inspire the youth. And your words and your deeds, your actions and your behavior,
they're not eating right, Rock,
are quintessentially. And let's get to that. But just before we do, I want to introduce a gentleman who was an incredible judge, who went on to, you know, be a superstar at HBO, and judges the fights for them. Oftentimes straightens up the guy that doesn't know what the hell he's looking at, Larry Hazzard. I mean, not Larry Hazzard, but Larry Merchant. I want to welcome Harold Letterman. Harold, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you, Rock. I wish this real fellow was a superstar. Bernard Hopkins is a superstar. I ain't a superstar. I just hang in there and call it the way I see it. How you doing, Rock?
I am great. Tell us about Bernard Hopkins.
Oh, man, Bernard Hopkins is incredible. I couldn't do that when I was 48. It was unbelievable last week. I'm telling you, unbelievable. I mean, I knew Bernard was going to beat him, but not that big. I mean, this kid didn't know who the hell he was in the ring with. I mean, Bernard had him frozen. The kid did, every time that kid thought about moving inside, Bernard whacked him with a right hand. I mean, it was beautiful. It really was. Bernard moved like a young kid, kept going from, you know, side to side along the ropes. And that kid thought about rushing in and throwing his best shots. And every time he did, he ate a right hand. So, I mean, Bernard fought a beautiful fight. It really was a very, very tactical fight, but it was, you know, it was terrific sitting there watching it, I'll tell you. You know, beautiful exhibition of boxing. You wouldn't expect a 22-year-old kid to box like that, let alone somebody 48. I mean, Bernard showed who he is. He's just a fabulous fighter, a great guy, and I'm so happy for him, really. You got to be overjoyed for Bernard Hopkins after that performance last week. I mean, he was absolutely unbelievable. People don't remember him for the, you know, in time immemorial. He was absolutely great, and that's all there is to it. Everybody loved it.
And Harold Letterman says something in those conversations that Rock, that is very, very, very true. It was a textbook fight. And that's how me and Azim Richardson trained. We wanted to make it to a point where we couldn't have room for error. And we, you know, the shoulder move, the foot movement. You know, Harold Letterman, it was the movement of my legs and my foot movement without running, without burning my legs up at 48, without, being chased around the ring. It was those subtle things that I told Andre Ward when you look at the tape and I'm hollering across the ring and I'm leaning over the rope telling my protege, Andre Ward, did you see that? Go home and watch it on tape. Did you see the subtle things that most people missed? Harold Letterman missed. There's the subtle things that won that fight. And I'm not taking away from my performance, but those things are important when it comes to mastering and drawing up a blueprint to execute your plan.
There was a lot of talk afterwards about whether or not you might ever fight Andre Ward. Can you give us any insight? Now you have a mandatory fight, right?
No, he's not someone that I'm going to fight, and they never thought about it. I heard many things, but I'm not interested in fighting Andre Ward, and if some will say because I'm not confident or whatever, that's fine. It's a little deeper than that. But to me, it's like, we'll never be the same, Rock.
Hey, Bernard,
we'll never be the same. I mean, you heard.
Can you help us out?
You're my baby in the back. You got a 14-year-old also. And yes, we all take risks. I've been taking it for 25 years of my career. But I know he came up in the business as an amateur, and I've been knowing him for a long time. And when he fights, you even hear Jim, what's his name? You even hear a couple of commentators, Max Kellerman, said they doing little things like Bernard Hopkins in his last fight. And Max seen it, and he true. There's a lot of things that I can say on this air that people agree or disagree. But, Rock, one thing it's refreshing, and I know you try to tell many fighters without mentioning names a long time ago, just to save your money and do right by it. You don't get rich by just saving your money. You make the right choices. You make the right decisions. And, you trust yourself, and you trust yourself to watch others who work for you. I'm so glad, Rock and Harold Letterman, that I'm in position where I can say that it's a potential $5+ million fight out there if I'm going to fight Andre Ward. And I say, you know what? Because of what I believe in my principle, I'm so glad, Rock, that I listened to guys over the years when I was coming up fighting under the Riddick Bowe undercard in D.C. when I fought Roy Jones Jr.
Yes.
And I'm glad that I put the principle up and I live off the interest. I'm glad that I own over 50 properties in the prime areas of Philadelphia, bought them when they was cheap, and now they up sky high because of the market. I'm glad that I listened to the pioneers that led the way. And I'm also not glad that I see the examples of those who didn't listen.
Right.
Who didn't listen to their managers, who didn't listen to their good managers or their good advisors or their good friends that was really there for them and not the paycheck.
Right.
So, Rock, to be in this position at 48, right, and say to them, I've done it my way all this time. I walked away from deals that I felt that wasn't fair, and you know about the Roy Jones saga that took place for 16 years, and we finally fought, and I helped him out and given him a payday. You know what, Rock? I'm glad that I got a chance now to see sticking up and taking a chance and a risk to believe and follow what you believe in, no matter what the circumstances is afterwards. You make an educated decision over and over, and then you make this decision to do this or to do that. Rock, I'm so glad that a check came on me in the ring. That to me is so important, and people listening probably think it's money is money. It is, but I'm so glad that I can make the choice for myself without having pressure to keep the lights on and feed my babies.
Bernard, that's called manhood. That's called dignity, and you have an ample supply of both. Harold Letterman, I want to thank you for joining us. We're going to go to break. Bernard, if you can hold on, man, I'd like to go to the top of the hour with you because I'd really like to hear about what you have to say about, obesity in the African American community and the efforts that you're making to try to help turn that around. Harold Letterman, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to this last segment of the Rock Newman Show. We have a true champion, a true person of inspiration and motivation. Last Saturday night, he became the oldest human being to win a major boxing title at the age of 48 years young. He's been with us for the entire hour, and this is just zoomed by here. And not only is Bernard Hopkins committed to what he does in the ring and talking about maintaining his dignity and having created financial security for himself and for his family and the ones that he loved. Bernard has the kind of sensibility that is where he is truly committed to looking beyond himself, looking beyond his beyond his family and his community to really the population at large. And to that end, he has ideas about how he wants to help those out of the African American community, those in all communities that are not consuming the right kind of food. They're eating to die instead of eating to live. Bernard, can you share a little bit of your thoughts and your philosophy and what you want to offer those people that certainly need your kind of advice and your kind of discipline and character?
Rock, I always speak those slogans of eat to live, not to die. And that's a saying that I try to tell and speak when I'm asked about how I do it, what I eat, because I'm constantly being asked about those things. It starts not only in the homes of the parents, setting the blueprint, an example, and then it goes a little further. See, the inner city normally has second or the third grade stores and foods to eat. And when you eat those foods that are not healthy or not fresh, and you consume them, you blow up, get bigger, have problems. And in the community in Philadelphia, D.C., and any other community in the city in America, you have certain stores other places, and you have certain stores in other places. You know, everybody can't afford to eat organic, but there are things that you can do to combat the foods that you know that you only can afford. But if they really look at the prices, around the corner, down the street, 5-10 minutes away from the foods and the stores they usually go to for all these years, they'll realize that it's not that big of a difference in price. Yes, certain things are higher than the other, and that's the way it is, and that's the way the industry, and that's the way the system set it up. See, Rock, I know that people probably think that if they don't know where I'm going at with this, there is a system and there is an agenda for people to get sick. There is an agenda in a big multi-billion-dollar business for people to take not one pill, but if you think you got a headache, I gotta think you got a headache pill. If you don't want to never get a headache, I gotta think you. I don't want to get it ever a headache again pill.
I want you to preach and teach. I want you to preach and teach, my brother.
What I'm saying is, boxing is what I do, but it's not who I am, and I'm gonna show you and tell you and people that's listening right now, I'm on something else. Because I see in my neighborhoods that I constantly visit that At 40, at 30, they have all kinds of problems. Guys my age are taking 5 or 6 pills that I grew up with. Some I don't even know. They're in bad shape. Stomachs are swollen up. The processed food that stayed on the food shelves for 9 or 8 months, and then you eat that and think that's not going to stay in you. See, Rock, we got a system. You got one system that if you're smart and you're wise and you have discipline and understand that you have to walk, you have to sweat, you have to get those impurities out as much as you can. And you have to do it to a point where you don't try to lose it in one day because you didn't gain it in one day. But if people understand that it's a system to regulate the population of the world, people are living longer. That's a problem. That's a problem big time. Because if there's more people on the planet and less resources. So part of it is population control. Part of it is you can afford and wise enough and smart enough to know what to avoid. Listen, we're all going to die. But if you had an opportunity before you ate the good food or the bad food that you can extend your life 5 more years, wouldn't you want 5 more years?
Bernard.
Who wouldn't want 5 more years if they get to do the things basically early on and train themselves, Rock?
Yes, yes.
To make their temple and their body more important than the car, more important than what you have that you treating like is worth and more value than yourself.
Hey, Bernard, you speak of, you really, man, I love what you are saying. It is just rings with truth in terms of, you know, sort of the big picture. And you're talking about a big picture matter that I hope more and more people become aware of. Let me ask you something, because I think my listening audience would find it fascinating. Not that everyone could hardly will have the kind of discipline that you've had. But there have been reports about your regimen and how you take care of your body and what you don't eat and what you do eat. Can you personalize it for a moment for my listening audience and for your fans about, you know, how you really have maintained yourself in terms of your consumption of food?
Yes. Well, I eat a lot of vegetables, but I don't cook the vegetables. A lot of vegetables, 90% of vegetables I eat, whether I have a blender or a food process where I just grind it down to liquid. I try to constantly continue to pump. When I say try, I constantly put the right things in my body, whether it's fruit and vegetables, whether it's chicken, whether it's, and when I say chicken, I'm not talking about, you know, when I was growing up, my mother could afford, you know, they used to lard and they use different grease.
Right.
Chicken tastes like fish. The fish tastes like chicken.
You ain't talking about Popeyes.
Yes.
Right.
The things are different now. So now, you know, the vegetables, the antioxidants, the fish, salmon, a lot of fish oil, a lot of foods is right in front of us that, you know, we can eat. Like I said, everybody can afford to go to the grocery store and shop and buy organic. That's what I do. I eat red meat once a month, especially when I'm training. A lot of protein from supplements, vitamins, protein shakes, and things like that in between my workouts. But I'm a basic guy when it comes to food. Do I eat pasta? Yes. I eat pasta when I'm active. And you know what, Rock, is real important that I use the word, like pasta for me is great. Pasta for some, Bernard, I eat pasta. If you eat pasta and you don't work out, pasta turns into energy if you're active. So to anybody that's listening that works in the office, that work in their only feet most of the time, going from one booth to another, pasta is the best time to eat pasta is when you're most active. And a certain time of day, you can eat a little more than you eat than you can't eat after 8, after 9, after 10 at night, because most people workload slows down. So when you slow down in your workload and you're not as active on your feet and at the office, why would you eat more knowing that you're not going to burn more?
Yeah.
So if everybody's listening, be conscious of when you're active, you can go ahead and splurge a little bit on good things that you want to eat. Always have a snack in between your big meals, or when I say big meals,
hey Bernard,
have a snack in between your meals so you can always keep that engine satisfied until you sit down and eat a reasonable portion of food.
Bernard, we must do this again.
In the studio.
And I'll reach out. I'll reach out to our dear buddy Kelly Swanson and see when we can work it out. When we can do this person to person. And I'm telling you, man, all of Washington D.C. will be in the studio to listen, to see, to hear you, to be inspired by you, by your career, by your deeds, by your actions, by your discipline. You have been the consummate professional, man. I have such respect for you. It has been an absolute honor to have you on, man, and I look forward to when we can do it again.
Hey, Rock, can I say one thing? I'll be real quick. And I'm sitting here talking to you now. I got a little plastic bag of blueberries. But this is something I do whether I'm fighting or not. And eat to live. I want to say one slogan that you mentioned earlier, and I mention it in my travels all the time. Eat to live, not to die. That if anybody, like you said, if you can't see what I've done March 9th, then you must be living under a rock or whatever the saying you're saying. If you eat to live, not to die.
Yes.
You can't understand that, then you can't understand anything.
And you've heard it from the best. Bernard Hopkins, thank you so very much. And this is a wrap for the Rock Newman Show today, March the 16th, 2013.